Taino Stories presents the continuation of the Taino Empire in Puerto Rico, Part 8. The town of Joncos belonged to the chiefdom of Jagual, whose chief was also named Jagual. In the town of San Lorenzo was the chiefdom of Calacua, whose chief was also named Calacua. Gurabo has always carried that same name as a town, and its chief was Gurabo. In the town of Yabucoa was the chiefdom of Yabucoa, which means land where planting is done with the coa beneath the palms. The name of the chief from that area is unknown. Guayani was a chiefdom in the area, and some accounts mention its chief as Guayani. Chief Guayani was documented as having been given, along with his village, in encomienda to Juan Ponce de Leon as a slave. Chacana was another chiefdom in Yabucoa. In the municipalities of the island of Vieques, it was called Biec, and the island of Culebra was called Abawan. The chiefs were the brothers Casimar and Yaurebo, and the territory was known as Biec. Both were brothers according to tradition. Their islands served as points of exchange and maritime defense. Those islands were filled with indigenous warriors, ready to fight against Carib Indians in case of maritime attacks. After the arrival of the Spaniards, the Taínos of those islands were enslaved and sent into the encomienda system. In the town of Loíza ruled Chief Jaimanio, uncle of Cacique Yuisa, the main leader of the area. His chiefdom was known as Jaimanio, within which there were two other subordinate chiefdoms. One of them was Caniaco, ruled by a leader of the same name, who was in charge of protecting the mouth of the Rio Grande de Loíza and overseeing trade with other islands. Cayagua was a river and a village that flowed into the Rio Grande de Loíza, and its village was under the command of Chief Cayagua. This village was different from the chiefdom of Cayagua in San Sebastian. Cainiabon was also the Rio Grande de Loíza, and along the entire riverbank there was a chiefdom that functioned as a fishing village, dedicated to trade and guarded by warriors to prevent an invasion through the Rio Grande de Loíza called Cainiabon. Its chief was named Cainiabon. Cubui was a village in the fishing area of Loíza. The Turabo chiefdom was also under the authority of Yuisa, with the village of Turabo that extended along the entire Turabo River. The islet of Old San Juan was called Hicasos, after the village that lived there, which was also named Hicacos. The chief was called Hicaco. The area of Santos was called Jueyes, after the chiefdom of Jueyes. The name of the chief was not preserved in history. In the area of Rio Piedras and Hato Rey, there was a village called Yurutungo. The name of its chief was not preserved. Cataño has always been called Cataño. In Taíno, Cata means flat land near the sea. It is not known if the chief was called by that same name. The metropolitan area of Puerto Rico was called the Silent Zone because the Spaniards removed the Taínos from there to establish the new capital. This made the new settlers believe that the Taínos had disappeared, when in reality they had been moved to the interior of the island and forced to work as slaves on haciendas under the repartimiento system or sent to other islands. For this reason, there is little information about the chiefs and chiefdoms in the metropolitan area. These settlements were destroyed to build houses and colonial buildings similar to the structures that existed in Spain. Trujillo Alto belonged to Caguas, so its chief was Caguax, and the village that existed in Trujillo Alto was part of the Turabo chiefdom. That is why some areas in Trujillo Alto are still known as Turabo today, and the river was also called Turabo. In the town of Arecibo, the chief was Arecibo, and his chiefdom was known as Abacoa, which was also the name of the river in that region. Caguana was a tributary village of the Abacoa chiefdom in Arecibo, with a chief named Caguana. Biajara was another chiefdom in Arecibo, led by Chief Biajara. Chagual was a village in the valley of Arecibo. It is not known what the chief's name was. Bacupi was another chiefdom in Arecibo, led by Chief Bacupi. In the town of Camui, both the chiefdom and the chief were called Camui, which means radiant sun. Inside Camui was the chiefdom known as Carbonera, near the site we now call Cueva del Indio. Notice that the name Carbonera is not of Taíno origin. It was a term imposed by the Spaniards after their arrival. The Tainos of the region were forced to deforest the area to produce charcoal, and from that came the colonial name. It was the name imposed after the arrival of the Spaniards, when they forced the Tainos of Camuy to deforest the area to produce charcoal. In Hatilo ruled Chief Bayanay, and both the chiefdom, the river, and the town carried that same name. In the region of Quebradillas, and Isabela ruled Chief Mabodamaka, whose chiefdom was known as Quajataca. His name remained etched in historical memory for actively resisting the Spaniards after the repartimiento of 1509. According to tradition, Mabodamaka unalived himself by jumping from a cliff into the sea, unwilling to surrender. In Isabela, some chroniclers mention Chief Maka, although he does not always appear in the official lists. It was probably an abbreviation of the name Mabodamaka. In Vega Baja, the leader was Chief Guacabo, who ruled the region crossed by the Sibuco River, which gave its name to both the river and the chiefdom. In Vega Alta, the chief was Aramana. The chiefdom of Sibuco was located there, along with the village of Tajin, and the main river of his territory was the Toa. In Toa Alta and Toa Baja ruled Chief Aramana, and the chiefdom was called Toa. From there come the names Toa Alta and Toa Baja. Bayamong was under the rule of Chief Aramana. This place was administered by a chief whose name was not preserved. The name Bayamong comes from the word Bayamis, from the river, which was a place where many freshwater crabs were caught. The name of the Cacique of Bayamong was not preserved. Guaynabo was a village that belonged to Bayamong, administered by Chief Mabo, who was subordinate to Chief Maguagua. In the town of Florida was the chiefdom of Guamani, whose name was also linked to the river of the region between Manatee and Florida, and the chief was called Guamani. In Barceloneta, the chiefdom of Yahueca is mentioned, although the name of its leader has not been preserved. Carolina was under the rule of Cachica Catalina. Her mother was Cachica Yayo, and her sister was Maria Ahoye. The Taino names of Catalina and Maria Ahoye have not been preserved, only their baptismal names, since they were one of the first chiefdoms to be completely destroyed by the Spaniards. The chiefdom of Carolina was known as Torabo, which means place of clear water. Follow us for the next series. What happened during the 40 years of Taino War in Puerto Rico while the Spanish government invaded? Because the Taino people are still here and we carry our history.